Hey, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. This is my first um, video here in a couple weeks. Last week I had posted some things, and the week before uh, from my talk at Avala, which was really cool, really fun. Everybody there was so nice and welcoming, and I'm going to be actually doing that again this coming Friday this week. So I'll most likely have that posted up in the near future. Uh, and so, yeah, things have been really happening. I'm really happy about what's been going on. So today I wanted to do something on Bruce Lee. People have asked me what the significance of having my Bruce Lee poster in my office is, and what the deal with all that is. Um, Bruce Lee had always been, for me, a major influence ever since I was a little kid. And he passed away about 5 years, 4 or 5 years before I was born. So he was never in my actual lifetime, but I grew up watching his films. I grew up watching a lot of the kung fu movies in the '80s that were on, at least in New York. It was on Saturdays at 5 p.m. They'd always have a kung fu movie on, and so anyway, that's how I got exposed to a lot of martial arts, at least initially, and things like that. And then, when I went back and watched his films, um, it just really struck me as a kid. And then as I just the kung fu and the moves and everything was really exciting for me to watch. But then, as I got a little bit older, as a teenager, I started, as I always have been, a very curious person. I started really delving in and reading about him. And at that time, there was still really no internet at all. There were these places called libraries where you would go and um, get books, and you'd keep them for a few weeks and then return them. You could always renew them for another few weeks, but that's how I got a lot of my information at that time, which, by the way, also helped foster patience. Not having everything at just a click away, which there's pros to that, sure, but you know it it helps to foster patience, to learn how to wait for things. And reading a book, is there's a lot of neurological benefits to that. Reading a kinesthetic book, holding a book, smelling the pages, turning the pages, all of that. Anyway, I started reading a lot about him as a person, as a man, and that's what really struck me. And then I started even going deeper into his philosophies and things like that. And as I really discovered, um, essentially nothing that he was proposing as a philosophy was anything new. And as I started getting deeper into Taoism and Buddhism and Eastern philosophies, Shintoism, um, uh, all of that stuff really made sense. And I'm like, well, yeah, none of the things that Bruce was saying in his interviews or in his writings, in his films, was anything new. However, the way that he presented it was very new, and it was very digestible to a Western audience. And he made it very cool to especially younger generations of people at that time. Um, it really kind of went along very well with stuff that the Beatles were doing. So, this was in the mid to late 60s. Bruce was in a show called The Green Hornet, even before his own movies and things like that, when he went to Hong Kong to start his own movies there. But um, yeah, it went along very well with what the Beatles were doing. That where they went to India with the Maharishi and started again. This was a Western uh, musical group, for anyone that hasn't heard of the Beatles, that was bringing over Eastern thought and Eastern philosophies over to the West, which was still very, very new to the West, to the United States, to Europe, what have you. Um, And I'll probably do another video on like some, a few minutes, like I usually do these videos here, um, for a few minutes, but on a very abridged version of the history of how Eastern philosophies moved over to the West here, which predates Bruce Lee and the Beatles by many decades, almost 100 years. Going back to about the 1870s. But yeah, his philosophies and how he presented those philosophies was very digestible, very cool. Um, he reworded some of it. Be water, my friend. I forgot. Oh God, I off the top of my head, I can't remember the interview that he did, but he did an interview with uh, an American interviewer, and that was where he famously said, "Be water, my friend." So he was saying, when you place water into a cup, it becomes the cup. When you place water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. When you put water into anything that you put it into, it's going to take the shape of. Yet, so it's soft and adaptable like that it can take the shape of anything that you put it into, but it can also penetrate rock or granite or marble or and steel and iron, anything. Eventually, it will permeate just about anything. So it's strong enough to do that, but also soft enough enough for us to just put our hand into. Um, so it's definitely the most adaptable element on Earth, natural element on Earth. So things like that, which was again nothing new. Lao Tzu was saying that thousands of years before, a couple thousand years BC even. But yeah, Bruce, the way that he presented things was very digestible to me and many, many, many others, millions of other people. When I went to go see his grave when I was in Seattle many years ago, which I also went over to Jimi Hendrix's grave in Renton, which is about 20 miles, like a suburb of Seattle. And I kind of had spiritual experiences at both of those times. But at Bruce's grave, I remember it was a very, very still day, uh, a clear, clear sky, which is something to say in Seattle. Very still. It was a late spring day. It was around May, I think. May, probably around 2000, early 2005, something like that. And I remember it vividly. And it was very, very still. Just the air. There was no wind. There was no. It was just very, very still, bright, sunny day. And I approached his grave, which unfortunately is right next to his son's, Brandon's grave, who died many years later. Uh, and so I'm standing there, and sort of just silently, paying my respects and things. And suddenly, this sort of strong breeze passed passed over me and through the trees that were nearby, and then again suddenly stopped. And again, there was no wind or anything after that. So it was very, very interesting. Um, so anyway, I hope that just in a very brief way illustrates the importance of Bruce Lee, his how he his physical fitness. Yeah, imparted that all to me, and again, many, many others. I can go on and on and on about this, but I just wanted to give a brief video today about some of that. And any questions about all this or about anything, any comments, questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next one.